the whole world doesn't understand. And thank goodness to these Robinhood people, Reddit people, they're getting this silver manipulation explosion, how short these people are. I don't think they can cover it. And this could do it. We'll see. It may not, but I'm hopeful.
Well, it's what an honor for me to be here with you and everyone else today. So thanks for joining us. Mr. Morgan, AKA the Silver Guru, Mr. Silver, the first person that when I started learning about silver, I looked up. David, thank you so much for joining us. How are you? And what are you thinking right now?
Well, I'm thinking this is probably the biggest opportunity for silver bulls in my lifetime.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. As we continue on what was Silver Squeeze weekend, a recap, now is just continuing into the week, because as I just wanted to present for a lot of people who are just hearing about silver for the first time, many of whom don't know what's occurred over the last year that has been tied in with all these political events, where we've seen silver continuously go missing during a lot of these events like COVID and others that the government is involved with, never getting answers. And then, especially because I've been studying it as I've been preparing the legal file. That's right, that's coming too. We'll get to that though. But while all of this is going on, the plan was just to rebroadcast that, but there's been so much as that never ended and is continuing on. And now, here we are, the anniversary of the Silver Squeeze weekend, and we have the Freedom Trucker Convoy that has shut down Ottawa. Now you see Aboriginal people of Canada are drumming along. They're doing fireworks. They're celebrating things. Justin Trudeau went missing for 2 days. A lot of people, myself included, were wondering if he was a little concerned about what was happening. Finally, he shows up today, says that he has COVID, his family got COVID, even though I saw a report that says he is triple vaccinated. You would think if anyone would be vaccinated, it would be the governor who's imposing mandates and locking people down in their homes. Yet he got COVID and his family got COVID. And a lot of people are now dead who have taken vaccines as well. And he's still imposing those mandates while the truckers are taking their country back in what has been inspiring to me. It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen, because of all these government crimes, they're a cover-up of the last one, which is a cover-up of the last one. And if the people responded by shooting someone or hurting someone, there'd always be someone left to one-up things. And I'm watching this most beautiful display of life I've ever seen. Peaceful protesting, and we will have coverage of Justin Trudeau's presser later tonight, because it was the most stunning thing I could have ever imagined experiencing in my entire life. And we'll get to that. But we're still catching up on Silver Squeeze. And in the last video, you saw how on the Silver Squeeze weekend at the Saturday night, some of the bullion dealers, they didn't actually run out of metal, but they stopped selling silver because the amount that they had hedged had run out. They didn't have any more, the rest was unhedged, so they wanted to wait until the COMEX opened to hedge there. Otherwise, they would have been selling metal, and if the price goes up, they would have lost a lot of money on that. That is how the silver industry is currently set up, whether people like it or not. In either case, that led to the conditions that you're going to hear about, because follow that into Sunday morning. First video we had that day was what's going to happen to First Majestic. Are they going to be short squeezed? And sure enough, they were. So you'll see that one first, and then followed by the Sunday morning roundtable we did, which was one of our most watched shows ever, because we got all of the silver experts that were available that day. So I could get as many people checking in, not just my opinion, but David Morgan and a whole bunch of others, which you will see very shortly in this video coming up here. So with that said, a lot happening in the world. I hope you're staying safe out there. There will be more coverage tonight. I'm going to sleep at some point, but right now, it's weird because it's a time where on one hand there's so many beautiful things happening that are going to change life in incredible ways. There's also some dangerous things going on out there, and I would just ask people to please be peaceful and safe. As far as I can see, so far that's all the people are doing. The violence is coming from the government side. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to that rule, but that's what I've been seeing so far. And with that said, here's the warm-up about whether First Majestic was going to be squeezed when the markets opened Monday night. So this is the Sunday morning of Silver Squeeze weekend, January 31st, leading into February 1st, which was the Monday. And here's what we're saying about First Majestic Silver. That's Sunday morning.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. Hopefully I'm coming through clearly now, getting a little technical issues sorted out, but welcome on back to our coverage this Sunday of the incredible events that are happening in the silver market. Hopefully you're doing well out there, and again, just enjoying that we're seeing some really historic events taking place. And this is going to be a very quick video about just some thoughts of what to watch out for on Monday when First Majestic Silver opens, whether it will be short squeezed. I might add at the top of the hour at 3 p.m. Eastern, we are going to have a bunch of the leaders from the silver industry joining me to offer their perspective. So, I mean, you've heard a lot of my coverage, a lot of the Wall Street version, and David Morgan, Alistair McLeod, Ronan Manley, and a whole bunch more. Rob Keens of Gold Silver Pros. Perhaps, Yara, you can put the link in the chat room there. But since that's coming up shortly, going to dig in here because here you can see First Majestic. And I would say, first of all, as you're reading and watching things tonight, you can hold me to this as well. But if he tells you that they know exactly what is going to happen tomorrow, I would be a little skeptical about believing that one. I guess the way I would say it is that imagine if it's a football game and someone fumbles the ball on the field. It can bounce a variety of different ways. I think we can make some educated guesses, and to the degree that thinking through some scenarios beforehand can be helpful. So at least that way, when things quickly and emotions flying and P&L statements are up or down, I find being prepared ahead of time. So I'm going to just share a couple quick thoughts here. Here's First Majestic. Let's back out the 6-month chart. You can see it's been floating around, $10 to $14 for a while, and then it spiked up on Thursday and Friday. But again, to put in perspective, something I think you might want to watch out for as well, where people say, well, it can do this or it can't do this. When you look at GameStop, I would suggest that people did not think GameStop could go from $20 to as high as $500 in a couple of weeks. And in a short squeeze like this, especially with what so many of us, including myself, thought had to happen at some point in silver, and certainly wondering if that was the case in First Majestic, they can get wild. This is, in fact, it's a pure science of human emotion, and here where nobody really knows for sure what's going on. But I just wonder if this happened last week and we've seen an escalation in the media. I'll say that on our channel, normally we do store videos get between 5 to 20,000 views. We do every night. I mean, yesterday we did a roundtable for 3 hours at midnight East Coast time, and there was already over 50,000 people have watched it. So there's clearly a lot of interest. Here again, as a refresher, is the link. Wall Street Journal was even writing. Wall Street Journal was writing articles about silver short squeezes. So my guess is it's going to be tough to imagine the price of First Majestic not up $1 or $2 or more tomorrow. Again, that is my guess. We'll see how it plays out. Why do I think that? Well, we'll come back to that. But we saw can happen. And here's an interesting headline for AMC and GameStop. It's likely going to take a constant stream of excited buyers to keep GameStop and AMC rally going. Well, there's some evidence that in the silver sector, you have plenty of that, because while we were doing a call last night, we saw AppMex, due to unprecedented demand, unable to take any orders till the market opens. JM Bullion, same thing. This morning, SD Bullion was added to the list. And then a couple of hours ago, I think you know that I have a partnership with Miles Franklin. They are currently unable, partly because no one knows what the price is going to open at, and dealers cannot hedge on the COMEX right now. This is what happens in chaotic markets. Hey, if there's some people out there who just think dealers are scalping everyone, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen anywhere, but there are reasons why. I mean, nobody knows what this thing is worth at the moment. And without the ability to hedge, I would suggest to keep in mind dealers are not hedge funds. They're working balancing order flow. So that, I believe, would be the main reason why you're seeing that. But more significantly, talk about what have we talked about for years? A short squeeze, a shortage of silver, unavailability. I know people gave Andy crap because they say he's talking his book sometimes, but the man sat there and said silver supply can dry up quickly, and that's exactly what has happened. One quick thing to look at. I've never seen this thing until this morning, ftx.com. It appears to be some sort of crypto-ish proxy of iShares, so factor this in as you will. But if I scroll down here a little bit, you can see this is 6 a.m., I believe, Central Time. The price of this started rising from, let's call it 26.20 to 29.80. So about 360. That looks like it came down quite a bit. Will this reflect what the open will look like? Again, I don't know what the liquidity is in this thing. Perhaps out there does and can comment. But when I think about what's happening, plus you add in that the massive chunk of metal that went into SLV, 34 million ounces on Friday. What if 70 million ounces are purchased on Monday? So let me put it like this. If I had to guess what the open will look like in 3 hours, how exciting will that be? I would think this would be a reasonable approximation. And then how would First Majestic look? I mean, how is First Majestic if there's short squeeze pressure, you know, plus these guys doing the marketing for them? I mentioned, or I did not mention this morning maybe, but First Majestic, they said some of the brokerages that you can only buy one share, which seems incredibly silly. I know some people are frustrated by that. I would say applaud that. Encourage that. I mean, now on behalf of my friends at First Majestic, I know it's a little bit of a hassle for them, but whenever you try and distort markets, the blowback is always bigger. We saw what happened in AMC. They tried that in AMC and GameStop, and it's one of those things where it seems to me like a last ditch move. And if you try it, it either works, and if it does not work, then often it explodes pretty quickly. So again, that's not to say that's exactly how that will happen, but those are the thoughts I have as we await the open of the silver market in 3 hours. I'm not sure what time the futures on First Majestic open, probably in a couple hours. Maybe someone in the chat can type in exactly when, but in either case, going to wrap up for now because we have this Silver Industry Roundtable. David Morgan, Alistair McLeod, Ronan Manley, Andy Schechtman, Rob Keens, and more going to be joining me to share some of their perspective of what's going on. We'll probably take some questions as well. So hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That way, as soon as all these things are covered, you will be the first to know. And with that said, I am going to sign off for now, but I will see you soon.
All right, so now that you saw what we had for brunch on Sunday, here was the roundtable with the top silver experts that I was able to find in the world that day and get on the show. all sharing their perspective. One of my favorite episodes of the show that I've done, just to have all these incredible people together. It's such a special moment in history, financial history. I think by the time it's all done, this will become a part of history. At least that if I have children one day, we'll be teaching them, and excited to teach them about it. Excited to share it with you now today. So thank you as always for being here, and enjoy this Sunday morning roundtable from Sunday, January 31st of Silver Squeeze Weekend 2021.
Well, hello there, my friends. Welcome back to Silverland. What an honor to be back here with you today, especially on behalf of the silver industry and everything that's happening on this historic weekend. And I really do honestly believe no matter what happens tomorrow, this has already been historic. So we were able to get some of these all-stars of the industry together. We got a nice Brady Bunch cube up here, 9 of us. And I think you know most of these folks, but we have Andy Scheckman of Miles Franklin, David Stein of Kuya Silver, David Morgan, Mr. Silver of the Morgan Report, Ronan Manley of Bullion Star, Rafi Farber of the Endgame Investor again, yes, which now I read. I kind of skip past the title because your headlines usually have me like drawn to a paragraph in there. Rob Keene of Gold Silver Pros, Alistair McLeod of Gold Money, and Silver Bill Murphy. I think we got Silver Bill smiling today, hopefully. So gentlemen, welcome on into all of you. And let's just go one by one. Say hello and keep it under a minute if possible. The most important thing you would share with the silver world today, and then we'll get into some discussion from there. So Silver Bill Murphy, as one of really the true heroes of this industry, I might add Bill, who sat there for years saying that when silver goes through 21, watch out, and you saw it shoot up to 29 in a matter of weeks. So Silver Bill, welcome on in. How are you, and what would you like the silver world to know?
Oh, thanks, Chris, for all you do. All I can say is I've been looking for silver to go to 100 for a long, long time. So talk about being early, but boy, all you can say is if these wonderkins can take stocks that aren't worth hardly anything and send it to the moon and have hedge funds lose billions and billions of dollars because they're short. The silver situation has been legitimately rigged and manipulated for so long, and should have already gone there without this incredible impetus that came up out of nowhere. So there's no telling what this can do. The bad guys never go away, but I think there's a physical problem already, and if this has every chance of making it go ballistic. We'll see. I've never had so much commotion over the last 2 days with emails, phone calls, messages, getting in touch with you, videos got to do. It's exciting as heck, and we'll see what happens.
Would you go as far as to say that Silver Bill Murphy is experiencing even like a faint hint of optimism? Are we in that territory yet, or is that too strong?
Absolutely. No, I'm always
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this could, because the whole world doesn't understand, and thank goodness to these Robinhood people, Reddit people, they're getting this silver manipulation explosion, how short these people are. I don't think they can cover it, and this could do it. We'll see. It may not, but I'm hopeful.
Well, it's what an honor for me to be here with you and everyone else today. So thanks for joining us. Mr. Morgan, AKA the Silver Guru, Mr. Silver, the first person that when I started learning about silver, I looked up. David, thank you so much for joining us. How are you? And what are you thinking right now?
Well, I'm thinking this is probably the biggest opportunity for silver bulls in my lifetime. And anyone that knows me knows I've been in this market for a long time. So I've got a quote that I can't find that has something to do with about all the manipulation, all the this, that, and the other thing. And all that will unravel at some point. It'll be known as the Great Silver Crisis. I'll get you guys the exact quote. David Smith has it. So I just looked up my book on Amazon. And by the way, it's selling for $70 to $100. You can get it off the silvermanifesto.com for, I think it's $35. So let's see, there are factors that produce immense profits, and these occur rarely. Investors stand at a unique opportunity in monetary history where the death of paper currencies on a global scale is taking place before their eyes. Because most are frozen inside the box thinking, few investors will ride the next move as silver and gold skyrocket in the years ahead. In fact, the primary purpose of this book is to educate the reader as to why there is no way out of the financial morass created by the financial elite. We have reached the point where the savvy few understand what is happening and take action, while the rest are left watching. Thinking the precious metals bull market is dead is wrong. The authors explain when to expect the next bull market to begin and why, how the 2008 financial crisis has been papered over, and what to watch for going forward. The real supply and demand, looking at both industrial and monetary demand, takes silver to places few people dream. Money in banking, fractional reserve banking, means to currency is also used in the bullion market. The best, surest method to stay in the profit zone and not worry about the wild price swings is how to buy physical silver. I'll leave it there. There's more to the intro on the book, but I thought, since I wrote it with Chris, just read it. Hope you don't mind. But it's more concise than I usually am. I could talk, guys. And it's great to see all of you, Alex here, Rowan, Rafi, Robert, Chris. Thanks for putting this together. I'll stay with you as long as I can. I haven't got any feedback. I got this on silent, so I might have to jump, but I'll be here as much as possible. Thank you.
David, one quick question before we move on. As someone who's followed probably more closely than anybody on the planet, does your gut tell you that what so many of us have expected to happen in terms of some sort of real break in the market, do you sense that we are here now?
Oh, yeah, I do. I mean, first of all, one of the bigger retail dealers got a hold of me. He had a question about silver that only I could answer. Excuse the ego, it's not true, but he's very knowledgeable. He goes, I got back to him as quickly as I could. About 4 hours later, said he found the answer somewhere else, which is fine. And I might not have known the answer. The point I'm making is, he said, do you know how tight the retail market is right now? And I said, no, I actually don't. He said, we're 4 weeks out minimum right now, just for basic silver rounds. And that was about 2 weeks before this thing came up. So everything in my body is tingling right now, saying, yeah, this is it. The whole problem I've got is how to best serve, everybody, especially our paid members, but the public at large that's looking for guidance. But it's not just me. There's Bill Murphy, there's Alex McLeod, there's you, Chris, there's a lot of people. But the main thing is not get too greedy. And the problem again is, what I just read. I mean, where do you take your profits? If you got a student loan to pay off, or a mortgage or a car or whatever, that's easy. Do that. But if you are debt free and you have all these profits, do you want to put them back in the fiat? And of course, maybe temporarily, I don't know. I don't want to take too much time, but I do believe this is absolutely it. We don't want to misplay it. We want to be able to look back and make maximum use of this for everybody involved. And I'll tell you, if we do it right, I think we're going to have our day. I mean, it's truth against fiction. It's good against evil. It's the people's money versus the banking elite. I mean, there's lots of metaphors I could use. I think I covered 3 of them. It's good enough. And the other thing I have to add is that a lot of people that never gave a hoot about silver still don't, but they see it as an opportunity for that getting killed in 2008, getting kicked out of their house because they couldn't make their mortgage payment, or losing their IRA during 2008. So it's not silver. It's not a religion. It's like, hey, this is an opportunity to get back because I got had by the financial overlords that have run everything. Believe me, money is power. They have it, and we have a chance to get it back. I can't say it better than that. Let me repeat it. Money is power. They have it, and now we have a chance to get it back.
Yeah, great words of wisdom there, David. And I'll echo what you said, where someone who grew up with a heavy shift to the analytical side and then have studied intuition, learned to just feel things a bit more. I've been feeling that I've been noticing people from different areas of life are feeling something. Again, and a disclaimer, none of this is financial advice. We're sharing our opinion and our experience here. So please, any of these financial decisions, consult the people you trust. But I just watch what's happened in the last 5 days, and I don't know, which is not to say like silver is going to be $50 by Tuesday, but I just don't see how you put the tree back into the acorn. I don't see it, but we'll take, that's why we got a nice round table here. And Andy Schechtman of Miles Franklin, my dear friend and partner. Good to see you today, Skipper. And
you too.
How are you? And perhaps, if I may pick your opening topic, if you could give us a rundown what you're seeing with the premiums and just the lack, I guess, can people buy silver anywhere, or what's going on there?
Yeah, well, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced, ever. We've had record volume for the past year and a half, and when I look at 2021, it's even outpaced what we saw in 2020, which I thought would have been impossible. Once we saw the Reddit phenomenon, for the last 5 days or so, I've been averaging between 300 and 500 emails a day, between 100 and 300 phone calls a day, every day. I have made it a mission, as I've mentioned on a lot of my interviews, that I would not be short on product. And as David had mentioned, it is getting tight out there. I purchased about 3 days before the Reddit deal, I purchased 80,000 2021 UK Britannias that are on their way to me. I'll have them on Monday. I have a tremendous inventory in stock right now, north of 200,000 ounces. But let me explain what's happening today. So for the first time in 30 years, I had to shut down my trading until 6 p.m. Eastern tonight. I have never done that before. That's what all the other online dealers have done ahead of me yesterday. Maybe they sold out a product. I don't know. I have a bunch, but here's the deal. On Friday, when the market closes, roughly about 5 o'clock Eastern time, what the dealers do is they take a look at the environment, and they'll say, well, how many ounces do you think we need to be long into the weekend? Oftentimes, my head trader will call me and say, do you have any interviews planned over the weekend? Because I need to know my position for the weekend. So we were long into the weekend, 55,000 ounces of silver. We've already sold 90,000. Basically, what that means is that I am naked exposed 35,000 ounces to the open in a couple hours here. And that's why all these other dealers are not taking orders. They're all naked exposed to the open. Even if their inventory is hedged, if they are out selling what they have hedged into the market on Friday, now they're naked exposed, and that's where we are. So at 6 p.m. tonight, Eastern time, I'll start taking orders again. And like I said, I have north of 200,000 ounces in stock, ready to ship immediately. Just can't hedge it into the open. If that isn't a sign of demand, in 30 years, I've never even dreamed of doing something like this. The demand is so overwhelming that I was writing up orders till 4 in the morning last night, and I'm dead serious. I've been getting phone calls since 6 in the morning. My phone is blowing up like the chat board on Chris's YouTube channel here. So I'll leave it at that, simply saying these Reddit folks have shown a light upon what's happening with the short positions, and they smell blood in the water. And I will tell you, I have never experienced a demand, an energy, a buzz in the air, not even remotely close, not even 2011, not March of last year. It's March of last year on steroids. So crazy, crazy time, that's for sure.
Yeah, and great point about 2011, which I remember clear as day. Had a happier start than the ending financially, although I've been thinking lately about how grateful I am to have had that experience. And that's something I'd say to everybody, whether you're just watching or trading or whatever you're doing. I think we're watching something truly historic. And Andy, just one thing on your behalf. As many of you who have been watching the show for a while know, Andy comes on every week, provides an update of the physical market. Andy, I know sometimes people give you crap because you would say, I think there's going to be a shortage. I think there will be a time where silver is unavailable. And they say, well, is he talking his book? Again, I know you. I think most of the people on the panel know you. I believe what you're saying. It's the same thing I've felt. And then here it is. I don't think this was unpredictable. So I will say that on your behalf, and then toss it over to Ronan, who is from Bullion Star. So Ronan, perhaps anything you could add to that perspective? And of course, great to see you. How are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, great, Chris. I'm glad to be here. And I think, as the other speakers said, I've never felt such a sense of optimism and potential. It's like we're standing on the verge of something different. You can feel that on Twitter. Like, for example, I've been looking at Twitter for 10 years and I've never seen such a huge volume of excitement, really, amongst the bullion dealers in our sector, and also in the general crowd that are on the Bullion Star Twitter line. It's just unbelievable, unprecedented. But one thing I was thinking of, just as you were talking a few minutes ago, is the fact that even while we're here on a conference call, you can bet your bottom dollar that the banks are going to be on conference calls on Sunday here in New York, in London. They're not just sitting at home waiting for the open. They're probably actively planning strategies to counteract the fear that they see out there in the market. But maybe one good thing is the fact that central banks don't have silver reserves and the BIS doesn't have a silver trading desk, only a gold trading desk. So if the banks want to get their hands on physical, I was thinking one thing they will try to do is borrow it. So there's a huge stockpile of silver in London. Going by the LBMA statistics, like there's 1 billion ounces, which I think is about 30,000 tons, 33,000 tons. So some of that they'll obviously try to borrow from whoever the owners are. But if the flows into vehicles like SLV keep up, which were like nearly 1,100 tons on Friday, they won't be able to they won't be able to source that physical anywhere within a few days. And it was just coincidental and lucky on my part that about 2 weeks ago, I put out a blog about the inflation adjusted price of silver. And I was using John Williams' shadow stats figures, where he calculates CPI as it would have been calculated in 1980. And the all-time high of silver on an inflation-adjusted basis is $966, so nearly $1,000. So I was thinking that when the Reddit crowd put out the figure $1,000, that might seem unrealistic, but actually it would only take the silver price to its inflation-adjusted high of 1980 if it used the CPI from 1980. And one more thing I was going to mention was about we'll have to make sure that it would be good to have a consistent message where people ask what is the best way to get exposure to physical and to also shatter the artificial suppression. And if you look at the internet, there's just so many different opinions. It would be very good if we could have a consistent message to tell people the best way to get exposure to get physical, because there's a lot of confusion out there about SLV and PSLV and mining stocks and First Majestic. And one final thing, I think that the regulators will obviously be plotting their response, and we'll have to look closely at what happens with position limits on COMEX as well, and if the CME group comes out with some changed position limits tomorrow morning.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Some great points that I'm writing down that we'll dig into further, because I think it's quite well said. Expect that they're going to change the rules. They're going to cheat. They're going to do all their little Weasley tricks like they always do. And as long as you kind of know ahead of time, which is easy enough to spot these things a mile away, we've seen it for the last 50 years. And just the other thing you mentioned about how in Reddit in particular, they keep mentioning $1,000 silver. And as a student of neurolinguistic programming, and maybe anybody else who's studied or familiar with that, and especially with financial markets that are the ultimate example of human psychology, you could say that you think silver isn't worth anywhere near $1,000, but if you have enough people start to think that that's the target and they're willing to put money behind it, And we're in an environment where Tesla's up 19x in the last year and a half, Bitcoin's up, 10 to 15x. And we saw in the last couple of weeks, some of these other stocks go up. What was GameSpot went from 20 to over 500.
Over 500, 580 in pre-market, I think on Thursday, maybe. AMC also, Dogcoin.
Which is, again, to be clear, not in any way saying expect silver to go to 1,000, but again, is just interesting to me seeing how much that number is spread around and having studied a lot of marketing and advertising and the way the subconscious mind is affected. So anyway, we'll see if any folks have other opinions on that. David, I know you have to leave in a couple of minutes, so why don't, for the rest of the time you have available, David Morgan, you can take it and share any thoughts that you have.
Okay, well, I really don't have much to add. I think we're in a seminal moment in the silver market, and that I like what Roland said. I think consistent message. I think that's buy physical. There's many ways to do that. We know a lot of money will pour into the SLV and the PSLV. I mean, right now the PSLV is basically a closed-end fund, so all you're doing is trading shares. I did send a direct message to Eric and suggested he take his shelf filing off and use it. I forget what it's for. I know what it's for. I forget the amount that it is, but it could be 20 million ounces at today's prices. I forget, but that would certainly inject some, let's say, power on the side of the physical demand for silver. So lots to talk about. I think I'll have to bow out here in a few more minutes, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and David, one question before you go. Obviously, everyone, I think, is eagerly awaiting in 2.5 hours the Open. Although, one thing that I did come across today that I'll pull up again, this is the first time I've seen this, and maybe Rafi or Rob could comment more on it, but there's this thing, FTX, someone sent me, that looks like some hybrid stable coins. So I guess there's some crypto component, but appears to be some sort of proxy of SLV. And you see about 6 a.m. this morning, if we call it 2620 here, and now we're getting a measure of over 30. And I also, the email just popped in that on ABC Bullion, perhaps maybe Rob, you could do the math for me, but apparently here's the FX rate. In the email, they said that they are selling silver here, but I'll read what he said. Good day, Chris. ABC Bullion in Australia, one of the most precious metals retailers, if not the biggest, increased the buy spot for silver to $29.52 US while the market was closed. This is the first time I've heard of them, so I don't know more. David, any thoughts on any of that? Is there any sort of indication, or do we actually just have to wait 2.5 hours?
No, I think Andy outlined it, maybe rolling both. Look, everybody stopped selling. I just got off the phone an hour ago with one of the biggest wholesalers around. He stopped. There's probably going to be a gap up. Is it going to be 30, 31, 32, 33? I don't know. Maybe 27. I doubt it. Probably going to be somewhere in the 30s. And then we're just going to have to see what happens from there. I mean, I think, we'll see 50 probably this year pretty easily. It's really hard to determine, and I want to stay cool, calm, and collected, but it's hard when you see what's taken place with GameStop as an example, and then the angst that the general public feels for what's been going on in the overall financial system for so long. And now a lot of people are awake and have an opportunity to take advantage of their interests. So it's really hard to put a metric on it. Plus, I'm biased. I mean, I've been in this, what used to be called the honest money movement for over 4 decades, so honest money for honest people. What a concept.
I hear you. And David, I guess it's that time where you have to run, but can't thank you enough for being here. I know the world appreciates hearing from Mr. Silver on what I'm already calling a historic day. And I guess last question, if you can fit this one in before you go. I think this surpasses what it felt like in 2011. Any thoughts comparing this to the Hunt brothers in terms of just how it feels or in any other way?
Well, going back to that quote, I can't remember. I said in that early on in the 2000s that there would be a day, I don't know if I said day, but there would be a time when, all of this pressure on the downside will come to the fore, and it'll be known as the Great Silver Crisis. I think we're there. I think this will be known as the Great Silver Crisis. Time will tell.
Well, David, I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Thank you, sir. In addition to being a great analyst, you're a great man and role model for a lot of us out there, and wouldn't have been the same without you today. So go do what you have to do, and we'll check back in soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Bye, David.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the great David Morgan. Thank you for joining us, David. And let's finish. We only got halfway through our introductions, but Alistair McLeod, welcome on in, sir. Thank you so much for being here. And how are you? And what are you thinking right now?
Well, I'm very well. What I'm thinking is that the Biden administration hasn't even got its feet under the table, and it's got two major crises to deal with. The first one was crypto. Just remember that the Bitcoin took off in the interregnum between Trump and Biden. They haven't managed to formulate policy, but there is no doubt at all that this cryptocurrency is a real threat to the dollar, and they will stop it. And I think they will probably stop it by having a go at Tether, which basically has financed the majority of the positions that people have taken out in Bitcoin. That's the first crisis. This is the second one. We have this extraordinary situation where you've got ordinary people basically just basically killing the masters of the universe. That's what we used to call hedge funds back in the 90s. I mean, who would have believed this would have happened? We find out that the whole system has basically evolved into a highly geared mechanism which has permitted people to go and borrow money to buy SLV, buy this, anything they particularly want. And they're clever. These guys are not stupid. They're clever. They have outwitted the system, and the system basically cannot handle it. So where we go from here, I think we're looking at the second crisis before Biden and his cronies have got their feet under the table. This is major. It's not just SLV. I think it has a far wider impact on the market. And I really don't think that the administration has a solution to this yet, let alone a policy. So this is going to be interesting. And I noticed that when silver took off, I think it was on Thursday morning at 8:30 Eastern, gold took off, platinum took off, palladium took off, even oil popped up a dollar or so. This has major implications the whole way through, not only precious metals, but I think the commodity markets as well. So I think this is going to be a very interesting week, and it is potentially very destructive for the establishment. So we watch it with great interest.
Yes, well, I appreciate that. And something I am just stunned by, I don't know if anybody saw that when you mentioned Bitcoin, and I pulled up the chart. Apparently, Wall Street Bets is a crypto now. Rob Key.
It's a hack. It's a hack.
It's a what?
It's a hack, I think.
What? Well,
Yeah.
Rafi, take it away. There's Wall Street Bets showing up on CoinMarketCap. Great to have you here, sir. And what do you think?
Mir Rob. So
Rafi, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rafi. I looked at CoinMarketCap this morning, and I noticed the Wall Street Bets thing. So I clicked on it, and it was a joke. So I think somebody hacked into CoinMarketCap, or maybe they have a friend in the back end somewhere. There is no coin called WSB. It doesn't exist. It's just it's a frenzy that's caught the internet by surprise. But what I really wanted to say was I wrote an article today. It should be published tomorrow, hopefully. The title was "The Shot Heard Around the World, Fired with a Silver Bullet." Lexington and Concord, the first battles of the Revolutionary War, they weren't major, they were minor skirmish, but what they did was they set off the conflict. And you asked the question, what do I have to say to the silver community or the silver investment community? I say, forget the silver investment community. This is not about a medal. This is not about some, shiny thing that we play with, like Scrooge McDuck in a giant piggy bank. This is money itself. And the
Well,
Wall Street bets
speak for
people.
yourself on the Scrooge McDuck thing, but continue.
Okay, no, if you want to play like Scrooge McDuck in your piggy bank, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But this is about the nature of money itself. If the Wall Street bets people want to bring down hedge funds, maybe they can bring down one or two in kind of a blitzkrieg against GameStop or the heavily shorted stocks like that. But there are 1,000 more that are just waiting to initiate short positions in these same stocks, and they will eventually overwhelm. If they want to bring down the establishment, the weak spot in Wall Street is in money itself, because gold and silver are money. And everybody who uses money is going to be interested in this, is going to have a vested interest in this. As Ludwig von Mises says, the monetary regression theorem, the only reason that the dollar has any value right now is because it can still buy some amount of gold, and silver is like retail gold, so it's related. It's also a monetary metal. So if they want to bring down the hedge funds, then they have to go after the quintessential financial asset, which is the US dollar. And the way they do that is by driving up the price of silver. And you can see, if you follow it logically, it affects everybody's life directly, especially if you are in a place where you are in a lockdown, like me, like Alistair in the UK, in Israel, lockdown for a year now, on and off. And they've taken our lives. And how can they do this? How can they fund these lockdowns? Because they can print money, which still has value. But if they go after silver, if they buy physical silver, not necessarily SLV, because SLV will have limitations on it, and the brokerages will stop it, just like they've done with GameStop. And we see that coming. They cannot stop you from buying a coin or from buying physical silver and driving up the price of real money. And that in turn will bring down the price of their fake money and raise interest rates, and all the bonds, all the treasuries that are stuffed in the balance sheets of all these banks will start to fall, and the Fed will not be able to stop it. And that's how you can free yourselves from these lockdowns, by ending the funding of them and making it impossible.
Yes, some great points. I'm writing a few notes down there because I think it would be interesting to discuss how the other markets might react tomorrow morning as well, although we will come back to that. But again, Rafi, I don't know if you saw my new truck I bought. So, anybody wants to come swimming in some silver coins later, maybe we'll have a party after the open and see how that goes.
You should buy stock in Caterpillar.
Yeah. Well, actually, I used to trade options on them back in the day. But either case, David Stein of Kuya Silver, as one of the people that the world is counting on to continue bringing us silver, it's a pleasure to have you on here. It was great having you on the show, and I'm glad people got to know you a couple of weeks ago. So welcome on in. And what are you thinking today?
Thanks, Chris. Well, first of all, I've been basically a precious metal specialist investor for the last 20 years, and this is a very unique, situation that we're living through now. Outstanding opportunity. So I'm very excited, and I echo the comments that of the previous guests about that. Now where my life has taken me, I'm CEO of a silver mining company, and I think there are some very interesting things that the producers can do to help with sort of squeeze the wedge in even further here. And that's, that could be a longer discussion than my minute I'm going to take up right now. So maybe I'll just throw that out there as something, we can discuss later. But, I guess a couple of quick things that I think everybody listening should be aware of. First of all, the mining industry has just gone through a really deep bear market for the last, kind of 8-ish years, and silver no different. And so what we've seen in the silver mining industry is a lot of silver miners have gone out and they've ended up going and buying gold mines because, for various reasons, felt that those were, it was a better way to grow production or easier or whatever. And so there are fewer and fewer true silver miners left, for when people, do get excited about silver like they are now. And then second of all, the other thing that is, I guess a little something just to be cautious of is that in the end, the true silver miners like Kuya and others like First Majestic I think we only control about maybe 30% of the silver production in the world. And the rest of it is basically byproduct production of other mining, gold mining, zinc, copper, and lead. So it's bigger mines like that produce small amounts of silver, but together you add them up, and that's really where a lot of the production comes from for the silver market. And whether or not they will care that much about the silver price, I guess we'll see. Obviously, it's better if it's higher, but how far they're going to sort of, I guess, contribute and defend what's going on here, we'll have to see. But definitely, I think the true silver producers out there, we're going to be, fighting for a higher price with everyone else.
Yeah, and David, you mentioned First Majestic Silver. We'll come back to that one because, again, one of the reasons there's a lot of reasons to like First Majestic, although a lot of investors were frustrated because last year First Majestic was actually lower when silver was $27 than when it was 18, and people were confused by that. We did a roundtable about a week or two ago where we talked about that unusual short position. I guess the timing worked out well on that because to me, either I'm missing something or it seemed like there was a short squeeze stacked on top of a short squeeze. I mean, you really couldn't make this stuff up because let's say silver goes nuts and then First Majestic on top of that. So we'll come back to that. Although first, I want to say hello to my dear friend, Rob Keynes, who I got to see this morning. We had a nice coffee and then Rob was feeding chicken to Silver Dog Nibbles over there. So Rob, great to see you again. And how are you, sir?
Doing very, very well. Thank you, Chris. And I just wanted to say it's an honor and privilege to be part of such a great panel of well-respected silver analysts. And I want to go back to something Rafi said earlier. If you're going to upset the apple cart with the financial establishment, you really have to do it at the base of money. And it's basically the bottom of Exeter's pyramid is what we're talking about. So I'll share. It's gold and silver at the bottom. A lot of people are sort of throwing stones up here at the derivatives complex, but really, if you want to free up gold and silver's money, you have to do it physical. So I love the enthusiasm. I love what's happening. I love the fact that millennials are getting involved. I think this is awesome. I think that probably is more out of left field for a lot of us than would have been expected that they would get involved. But I think it's fantastic that they are, and they're voicing. They're bringing their voice to this battle against the financial repression in various ways. But I want to encourage everybody, go after the physical. If it's really about, and I don't think it's just about silver. I'll echo something Rafi said. I think it's about the financial repression. But the way you do it is through the metals, the true money, the constitutional money, what's been money for 5,000 years. So everybody here, if you're wondering, and I see a lot of this in chat, should I go after PSLV or SLV or how should I play this? I would say the easiest and quickest way is to go after the actual metals and whatever format you can. That will cause a run on the system faster than going after the derivatives.
Yeah, I would think so. And Ronan, I know you had some thoughts on that before. So what would you suggest to investors that, if people, again, not financial advice, but if people are asking the question and just want your research and expert opinion of if they want to put pressure on the system, what would be the most appropriate way of doing that?
Well, I agree with everybody else speaking today that people should buy physical in as much as they can. And also don't get too upset if the price because the price of silver and the price of gold are both established by the LBMA in London and the COMEX in New York. It's the same bullion banks in both venues behind the scenes who determine the price. So they usually can create silver credit and gold credit out of nothing to keep the price subdued, because they can create infinite amounts of this. So if you see the price shooting up, as it probably will today, but then tomorrow morning going back down or being quite volatile, don't get too upset by that. That's just the dealers and the bullion banks trying to scare out the longs, and just continue to, as much as possible, take physical, because in a situation where the price of physical silver detached or diverged from the price of paper silver, it would be expected that the price of paper silver would go down and would go to zero because it represents a fractional claim. So we might be looking at, if this did go according to theory and the market became two different markets, we might be seeing the reestablishment of a physical price for silver, which would go much higher, whereas at the same time, the paper price might actually go down because the paper price represents contracts or multiple claims on the same amount of physical, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So like the way the Bitcoin communities say hold or hodl, I think it's a case of buying physical and think of it in terms of ounces. Like you could say you can buy 100 ounces, 1,000 ounces of silver, say to your friends, I bought 1,000 ounces of silver. It doesn't really matter what price you bought it at. You're buying it because you're wanting to contribute to the combined effect that this is going to have on the bullion banks.
Yeah, I appreciate that, especially because, yes, Andy, you and I have talked about that a lot over the last year, especially when COVID hit last year and the premium spiked. People were saying, why is silver so much more expensive than the COMEX? I said, gee, well, I wonder if we're going to see if there really is a delivery mechanism, because at some point, what I would expect is that what you can get physical silver for will just be called the price. And the COMEX, all right, if the premiums get high enough, I guess, well, again, there's an ARB on the board. If somebody is able to drain that, and I've been sitting here all weekend wondering what the old options shop I worked for, that would be a massive execute situations like this. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody mentioned, you know, it's one thing when silver bugs are ticked off at JP Morgan, but when you investment funds that don't care about silver, but they want to make money and they spot some stunning dynamics of this. So I think that would be helpful to keep in mind. Yes, a lot of the world's going to be looking to the COMEX and thinking that's the accurate gauge. I guess that'll be up for you to decide. If I say, hey, it's a national policy that everyone has to wine shirt Friday, but nobody listens, at some point, is that what COMEX, because they could have their price, they could say it's $10, you know, -3, and nobody will care. I think we may be headed towards that. Although we do have a new guest joining our panel that I think actually you may have met before, but someone who has really been a big part of what we're doing here at Arcadia, and also can provide a perspective. Let's see if she pops in there, because joining us now is the great Yara Vinay, my partner here in Arcadia, and I will set the context as she logs on. Hello, Yara. Welcome on in.
Hi, everyone. What an amazing thing to be a part of. I feel extremely honored to be here with all of you guys today.
Well, Yara, you've become a big part of the silver industry too, because obviously, I don't know if we would still have this this panel and all the things we're doing this weekend were not for the things you do behind the scenes. Yara also handles any orders that we get with our partnership with Miles Franklin. So you have a very good idea of the order flow, also the emotional tone. I mean, I know you're on the phone talking to people all day. You know when they're happy, you know when they're ready to panic.
Yes.
And also, I think perhaps you could touch on a little bit, because there's a lot of people who I think are new to this. And when I met you about 2.5 or almost 3 years ago now, I guess it was, I don't think you had heard much about silver, but there was me rambling on about silver and hey, it's under the cost of production. And so anyway, welcome on in, and how are you? And any thoughts you'd like to share?
Thank you for the welcome. Like I said, I'm honored to be here. It's actually been a really busy morning. So I'm grateful to get to take a moment and get to, I guess, connect with people, with you guys, but also with a larger audience, because I do talk to people one at a time. And yeah, it's been a really busy, overwhelming. People have a lot of questions, want to know what's going on. And so it's nice that you guys can come here and kind of address the bigger picture. And
by the way, Yara, I don't know if you caught the first half, but in terms of wanting to know what's going on, basically we've been talking for the last 50 minutes. All 8 of us are hoping you would know the answers.
Well, I don't know that my crystal ball is shined up quite enough to know exactly what's going to happen. But I mean, from the amount of people who I haven't heard from in months to people who are brand new to silver in general or purchasing anything physical, I mean, the people are out, they're calling, everybody wants to get silver now. And, you know, as Andy said earlier, like for the first time in Miles Franklin history, we're halted. So, you know, this is an unprecedented time. And I think people, going back to what are people sensing? I think people are really feeling that, and they're getting in for the first time or getting back in, or, you know, really wanting to find out from me what other people are doing as well.
Yeah, and Yara, what would you say? Bill, is that almost your cutoff time?
Yeah, as we discussed ahead of time, I got another Zoom thing to do, indicative of what's going on here today. One quickie question, if I may. First of all, Yara, great talking to you, seeing you there.
Great to see you, Silver Bill. Happy day.
Thank you. It is so far. I give a question for some of the giants here we have. What is the situation that Roland and Alistair of the physical silver market in London? I thought there was a little bit of a dichotomy there, and I'd like to hear it from you guys, just real quick, if you could. I mean, is it available in London, or it's not available, or it's tight? Because we've been hearing about tightness, but it hasn't shown up yet.
Well, shall I start off, Ronan?
Yeah.
My information in London, which is not brilliant, but it seems to be confirmed from everybody I talk to in the market, and that is there is no physical silver in any size available. And when you look at what's in the London vaults, I guess that, I mean, SLV is a very large part of it, probably half the outstanding silver stocks in the vaults. The rest of it, my sense of it, and I'd be interested in what Ronan thinks about this, is that the users of silver, you know, making all these things like solar panels and all the rest of it, are storing their stocks in the vaults prior to taking delivery. So the idea that non-SLV silver represents a pile of silver which can be drawn down upon, I think is false. And certainly the experience of traders in London seems to be there really isn't any liquidity over here. I mean, usually what should happen is you have the liquidity here and you hedge it on COMEX. But I mean, they're short on COMEX. I reckon that swaps net are just short of 100 million ounces. There's no stock in London. So this SLV squeeze, Robin Hood, and all the rest of it is very clever in its timing, very clever indeed. So can I hand it over to you, Ronan, because I know you analyze these things so closely.
Yeah, before we came on this call, I was looking at the figures for both the LBMA in London and for COMEX. And the LBMA figures are going to be a few months out of date because they have a 1 month reporting lag. But the LBMA claims that there are just over 1 billion ounces, nearly 1.1 billion ounces of silver in London, which is 33,000 tons. And as Alistair says, 1.1 billion in total and 600 million are in SLV. So literally nearly 19,000 tons are in SLV. But they never say, as regards the silver that's not in ETFs in London, that's still in the vaults, they never break that down about who owns it and why it's there and how long it's been there for. So we can't really assume that any of that is available to the bullion banks, because as Alistair says, it's owned by the owners for their own purposes, presumably industrial or investment related. And looking at the COMEX, right now there are 12,000 tons on COMEX. 2/3 of that is eligible, meaning that it's just silver that's in the vaults. The other third is registered, which means it's been involved in trading on COMEX. So that's about 4,000 tons that is currently, in one way, registered to be able to be traded in COMEX. So that's not really that much, because last Friday, SLV got in nearly $1 billion, which is equivalent to 1,100 tons. So the next few days will be interesting to see how SLV, JP Morgan custodian, sources that silver. They claim that the silver is in these vaults like Brinks and Malcolm Mitt and the JP Morgan vault in London. And that presumably has to be true, or else the whole thing is a fraud or a charade. So it will be interesting to see if any of the banks make announcements that they can't source silver, because at the end of each day they'll have to, for SLV, they'll have to say if they source their silver, or else they're just biding time and pretending that they have.
Ronan, do you think they could have added 34 million ounces on Friday, like is reported that?
Well, I was looking at the silver bar list that JP Morgan produces on the iShares website every day, at the end of every day. And that claims that there are, I just did the figures, that claims that there are 17,650 tons in SLV. But on their homepage of iShares, they say there's 18,700 tons, i.e. 1,100 tons more. So they're saying that they have 1,100 tons because of the inflow, but that isn't being reflected on the bar list. So it'll be interesting to see at the end of tomorrow, when they run the bar list again, whether they will have sourced that extra 1,100 tons. And if you think about it, if they have to repeat that again on Tuesday, well, for tomorrow's trading, if there's huge inflows into SLV tomorrow, they'll have to reflect that Tuesday. If there's huge inflows Tuesday, they'll have to reflect that Wednesday. So there's a finite amount of silver in London. They could borrow it, depending on who the owners are. But will the owners with the price going up, will the owners want to lend silver that's in those London vaults?
I got to go. Thanks, everybody. Good seeing you all. Thanks. Have a great time, and best wishes for tonight.
Thanks,
Great.
Silver
Bye,
Bill,
Bill.
and
Have a great
congratulations.
See ya.
All righty. Well, there is Silver Bill Murphy. And Ronan, would I be correct, when we're talking about all these questions with SLV, that I'm assuming it probably doesn't inspire you with confidence that the custodian just got fined almost $1 billion for manipulating the market on not a few, but hundreds of thousands of occasions, in the CFTC's words. And I know a lot of people are going to SLV right now, and you touched on that before. A lot of the people in the Wall Street Bets Forum are targeting SLV, and perhaps you could put in context the risks. You've been talking about a little bit, but again, just some of the reasons why that really is. We're kind of at this situation where the true risk of that could, if it does turn out to be there, would be exposed in this type of environment.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, JP Morgan is one of the biggest players, or if not the biggest player, in the wholesale bullion market in both London and New York. They're owner and operator of vaults in London and New York. They're a clearing member of London Precious Metals Clearing Limited, which is how they clear unallocated silver and gold in London. JP Morgan is also a clearing member of COMEX. So they're literally the central kingpin of the gold and silver paper market, the paper gold and silver markets, and one of the most powerful members of the LBMA, one of the founding members of the LBMA. But at the same time, they've been seen and accused and prosecuted, and successfully prosecuted, for manipulating precious metals prices, gold, silver, for years and years, and in what the Justice Department called a criminal enterprise. So this bank, with the blessing of regulators, is still in operation. They haven't been barred from being a member of the LBMA. They haven't been barred from trading on the COMEX. Actually, the opposite. They are getting more and more powerful because other banks have left or are leaving, like Scotia. So JP Morgan is becoming relatively more powerful. So for anyone that is looking at this market for the first time and thinking about buying physical silver, if the price of silver can be unchained from the way it's been manipulated, it will really be a big problem for a bank like JP Morgan, which has, without unashamedly been manipulating precious metals for so long. But so getting back to your point, Chris, if you buy SLV, you're really dealing with a counterparty, the custodian, who is JP Morgan, who is a convicted criminal. Do you want to put your money in an SLV ETF where there are so many counterparty risks and weak links? Or do you want to buy physical silver, which doesn't have any counterparty?
Chris,
So,
you're on mute.
Whoops, thank you. Ronan, you pulled it up before, and perhaps you could set the background for this, because JP Morgan, I don't even think they had a warehouse in April of 2011, last time silver at 49. Then I believe it was that month they started loading it up, or they got it in action. Then they started accumulating silver, coincidentally, right at that exact time it crashed. And then over the next 9 years until last year, they had 160 million ounces. And I believe it was the first day of July delivery. I always get my registered eligible. They switched 30 million into the other one. And that was around when they get fined by the Department of Justice. Yet, I guess with a question, A, is any metal leaving the building? And also, it looks like throughout all of this, now that total amount has gone up to above 190 million. So anything you could share on that?
well, are you talking specifically about the New York vault of JP Morgan? Or
I'm talking
London
about
also?
what shows up on that COMEX report. But whatever context you'd like to put it in.
Yeah, well, I actually, back in, I think it was early 2012, stumbled upon the location of the JP Morgan vault in New York. They were trying to keep it very secretive. And it turns out that it was in the basement of the Chase Manhattan Plaza building, which is across the road from the Federal Reserve on Liberty Street in lower East Side Manhattan. And you have to remember that the CME group will allow approved vaults in New York, which are JP Morgan, Scotia, HSBC. It will allow them to have silver in a 150-mile radius of New York, because that allows some of the other approved vaults like CNT and Delaware Depository to also get approved by the CME. So I think that JP Morgan maybe has quite a lot of their silver stored outside New York, because the real estate values of central New York vaults it sort of makes the storage of silver quite expensive. And HSBC used to have a vault up in upper state New York. So I think that the JP Morgan vault statistics might not actually be accurate. There's no way to know whether they're accurate. They've never been audited. That's one thing that if this thing blows up, we should really press for some actual proof that they have the silver stocks that they claim to have.
And is it correct that I've heard people say that they did get fined for submitting false data to the COT report? Is that accurate?
I haven't heard about that. I can't comment really because I haven't heard anything about that.
All righty. Well, thank you for that great information you shared there. Alistair, I think this next one is going to be for you, but anybody else who wants to comment, we're looking at this COT report. Of course, if anyone wants to giggle about how the LBMA and these exchanges, they talk about transparency and then they produce this nonsense. But Alistair, you're one of the few people in the world smart enough to actually decipher this gibberish. And I wonder if you could talk about this field here, where sometimes I wonder if like the guys at the COMEX are like, damn, why did Charlie put this thing in here 20 years ago? Because this field that says 4 or less traders short 34.9% of the open interest.
Yeah.
And if we look up here, we see they list the open interest as 167,000 contracts. So 167,000 times that 34.9%. Whoops. You got a 167. Anyone's playing along at home times 5,000. then times 35%. So the way I read this is that they're saying that a group of four, I assume banks, are collectively short a total of 292 million ounces of silver. Put in other words, every time silver rises $1, they split a $292 million loss, which means if silver went up $4, that would be about a $1.2 billion loss. And last part, multi-part question here, but I've heard some people say, well, this is the banks after they, and David Stein, maybe you can comment on this too, that the metal goes from the mine, the refinery, the bank is holding it until they send it to their customers. So there's some hedge there, yet wouldn't the customer also be hedged, offsetting that? So Alistair, any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's 4 or less traders or 8 or less traders. I think actually it's a little bit sort of confusing. We don't know who they are, as you mentioned. One assumes that there's a bank or two in there, but how many are banks? We really don't know. There could be producers in there. There could be very large hedge funds. I mean, we just don't know who those 4 or less or 8 or less.
Could that be a government as well?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's not impossible. I must admit, I hadn't really sort of thought that one through, but I would have thought that they're probably working within the categories of what we've got here. Now, to my mind, the category you've really got to look at is swap dealers. They're the ones who basically run, I mean, they're basically the bullion bank trading desks, if you like. And if you take the swap dealers plus the producers, they equal the positions, the opposite positions of managed money, other reportables, and non-reportables. So that, if you like, puts it into context. What I tend to watch is obviously what the swap dealers are doing, because if they get very short, then they are being squeezed, and we might expect a response from them. The fact is, they have been net short in record territory for over a year now. And I mean, it's quite extraordinary. And they've never actually managed to get that position down. That translates into about, at the moment, at current prices, no, sorry, I'm talking about gold. It's the gold one that I really analyze, but in gold, they are horribly short. In silver, they are less short. If you work out,
I think it's 2.7 billion, Alistair.
Yeah, but if you work it out in terms of ounces, you'll find that the swap dealers are net short, about just short of 100 million ounces. So that gives you the context that I think we're really looking at. 100 million ounces is by no means anything like a record short for the swap dealers, but the problem is that it's a narrow market. And now that we've got this development with Robinhood and Reddit and all the rest of it, and Wall Street, whatever it was, you can see that lack of liquidity is going to be a serious problem for these swap dealers. Because it's the same dealers who are horribly short of COMEX gold. I mean, that position, COMEX gold position, is around about $36 billion between them, and there's about 30 of them. So we're looking at more than $1 billion each on average, short in the gold market. And on top of this, we now have this huge problem developing in silver. In my view, I think it's quite possible that COMEX is going to get into so much difficulty over the silver contract, it will spill over into the gold contract, and we could well find ourselves in the sort of crisis which they had back in 1973 when the Hunt brothers cornered the silver market. How they get out of it this time, I really don't know. I don't think it's going to be nearly as easy, because the target is not just one bunch of maverick billionaires from Texas who somehow you can take out. In fact, I think what happened to them was that the Arabs promised finance and then they didn't provide it at the end of the day. So the scheme fell apart. But this is more broadly based, and I would think that it's virtually impossible for COMEX to stop this developing into the sort of situation where they consider force majeure. I mean, to me, I think that's the logical extent of what we're seeing if it continues to run.
And Alistair, a follow-up there. You touched on, it's not just the Hunt brothers, but Again, in today's world, where I was stunned to see this one the other day because of things that I never thought I would see the Wall Street Journal talking about, was silver manipulation and short squeezes. Are we in an environment now where, again, I mentioned that I worked for a trading shop before, and I'd be darn curious what they're thinking about now. And I mean, do we have, put it bluntly, are the was it sharks smelling the blood in the water? It would seem like you would have to think that's more likely than not. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. And we've got to make out, be careful who we're calling the sharks. Normally, I would call it the bullion banks. But in this case, we're talking about ordinary people who are ganging together for whatever reason. A lot of it is sort of Occupy Wall Street Mark II, to take down the system which they've decided they just hate. And I think that this is just completely unexpected. And as I said earlier, I mean, the Biden administration hasn't even got its feet under the table. And this is the second major financial crisis they face before they can, without taking any decision whatsoever. So we have to see what the reaction is next week. I guess it will be a certain amount of confusion because, I mean, surely the first thing they should have dealt with is the crypto thing. I mean, they could have taken that apart very, very easily, basically by stopping Tether. And they could do that. Honestly, it is not a problem to do that. Did they do it? No. So in other words, they're sitting there not knowing what the hell to do about this situation. And we have to bear that in mind when it comes to how this is likely to run. If they don't understand the situation or quite what to do you really think that the committees of the people involved are going to take an instant decision to how to deal with this? I don't think so. I think there's lots of people going to be running around in the administration like headless chickens, trying to blame someone else, blame Trump, blame whatever, but what the hell do we do? I don't know. It's very much like that, I think.
Well, that does seem to be typical of government. Usually they have no plan and then eventually things backfire and they cover it up, blame it on someone else. But again, that's why I'm grateful everybody's here today. And by the way, for everybody watching at home, if you're enjoying this, finding it helpful, go ahead, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We have more coming tonight too. So question, and anyone who would like to touch on this, David Stein, if you have any thoughts. Is it possible that some of that is hedged elsewhere? I mean, we don't know it could be, and we would never know. I would think if it's hedged somewhere, then again, if the industrial users, wouldn't they hedge and that offset it? But David, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So the path from producing some kind of ore to the actual 99.99% silver coins that you guys get is there's actually several different custodians in between, and any one of them could be hedging at any given time. So starting with the producers, I don't see a lot of silver companies hedging. We don't hedge, but it's quite possible some of the polymetallic or gold miners could hedge their silver since it's not a core product for them, or so that could be a source of some short. Then what you do is at a mine, you either produce two products. One would be a concentrate where the silver would be mixed with other metals, or you'd produce a doré, which is basically a gold silver metal bar. So you produce one of those two things, depending on the type of mine. And then if you produce the doré bar, it goes straight to a refinery. If you produce the concentrate, it goes to a smelter first, then to a refinery. And then in between, before you send it to the smelter, there could be a metals trader in between, like Glencore or Trafigura. So they could be hedged. The smelter could be hedged. The refiner could be hedged. And then you finally get your coins.
Do you think there's any chance there's 292 million ounces of hedges in place at this moment? With those industrial users, I think that seems like that would be a lot for just them, because that's that would be a significant portion of the annual silver production right there. So for that to be hedged within industry,
I'd be highly surprised.
Well, I have a question on that, if you don't mind. Would they be hedging just what they think they're getting immediately in their inventory? So they're hedging forward, but not 6 months a year, but maybe
Correct.
the next 30, 45 days.
Yeah, they're really hedging just to basically protect their business risk over that short period of time that they have custody of the product.
Anybody else have anything to add on the hedge there? Andy, from your perspective, perhaps? And you're on mute, sir. Andy, you are on mute.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it seems like a lot to me as well. You know, just the bullion industry alone certainly has an awful lot to say about hedging, and you know, we're hedging our inventory continuously. We have north of 250,000 ounces in stock right now that's hedged. We're just one company. You know, I don't know. I think that the hedging and the forward selling is certainly it seems like it's certainly somewhat of a opaque type of topic here, and I really am not quite sure, to be honest with you. I'll simply tell you that, you know, it's typical for us to be hedged anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000 ounces at any given time. So take that as you will. I'm not sure how the total numbers spread out over the entire universe, but certainly when you're talking large amounts, anyone who's going to custody large amounts is going to be hedged. And you can see what happens when the hedging mechanism breaks down today, when every major retailer in the United States isn't accepting orders. And that's exactly why we have plenty of silver, but we are not able to hedge that risk to the spot price exposure right now. So take that for what you will. I think it's a very important topic. If you start to see COMEX break down, all of a sudden overnight, the entire precious metals universe breaks down. We're not able to hedge inventory. We're not able to take large orders. Everything is cash on demand. So interesting times for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, Skipper. And here's a fun one that I think people would enjoy. Hear a lot about JP Morgan. Ted Butler writes a lot. I think he feels they have at one point had as many as 1 billion ounces. They do have the 160 or up to 190 now on their COMEX statement. I think there's a lot of turnover that goes on. Ted feels they take some from there. Andy, you could probably comment on those massive Silver Eagle sales from 2011 to 2015. And I know it started earlier, but 2011 was when it really spiked. And who knows what else they're doing, but does anyone have any thoughts? I mean, I think a lot of what Ted is saying makes a lot of sense. Again, I'm not in their vault, so I don't know. So does anybody have any particular thought on that?
Well, I mean, I can vouch for what you're saying about the Silver Eagle sale and Maples. If you look at what their production was leading up to that, in both the US and the Canadian mint numbers had exploded, literally exploded. It did start a few years earlier, but the question was always, who the heck is buying all these Silver Eagles? And as one of only 27 US mint authorized resellers, I had my ear to the track pretty well, and talking to other dealers and other wholesalers, it was really kind of a mystery who's taking all of these Silver Eagles, because the numbers had literally exploded in the case of the US mint. I haven't looked at the numbers for a while, but they were producing as much as 40 or 50 million ounces per year back then. And prior to it, it was a fraction of that. Same thing would be true with the Canadians. I think you want to go down the
Andy,
other
can
way.
I hop in for 1 second? You can see
Yes.
the total on the right column here. So 1986, it's 6, 7, 4, 5, under 10, a little bit over 10. Then 2008, here's where 2007, you start getting mortgages melting down. 2008, we talked yesterday about the shortage while the price was plummeting. Sure, according to Ben Bernanke, that's completely normal, but he doesn't understand gold. I'm guessing not silver either. Then jumps to 30, 35, 41 in 2011. Yet here, as the price is getting slaughtered, and I think everyone on this panel can speak to the sentiment in the silver world in 2012 and 2013. You thought people were jumping out of buildings, yet Here, 45. I mean, like, go back. It was in 1996. It was 4, and here it's 45. 20 years later. Ronan, any comment on that?
Well, on the volume of silver eagles that were being sold back in after the peak in 2011 up until 2015, well, not really, just to the extent that you could also look at silver maples in addition to silver eagles, because they're the two big leaders on silver coin sales. And in both cases, I remember doing some research and some reports about the silver eagle and the silver maple, and they both had that same trend of a huge rise. So it was more than just the US, it was North America, Canada, and the US. And remember, a lot of these coins, all of these coins have huge international customer bases as well, in Asia and in Europe as well.
All right. Anybody else? Any comments on JP Morgan, how much silver you think they might have?
One last point, Chris, the Royal Canadian Mint numbers look identical to that, only not as many, but the jump from where they were, what they were producing to what they produced over that period of time, in particular 12, 13, 14, 15, as the price was getting clubbed, that's when everyone was asking who the hell's buying all these coins. And so both the Eagles and the Maple Leafs would have, and Ted Butler said that they were not only redeeming shares out of SLV, but also buying up all of the physical coins and melting them down into 1,000-ounce bars. So I will simply tell you that the industry was not selling as many Silver Eagles and Maple Leafs as were being produced. That is for sure.
All righty. Rob,
Yes.
I'm going to give you the first crack at this next one here, because we were talking about this after brunch while you were walking Nibbles home, and he was chasing you with that chicken in your hand. First Majestic Silver had quite an interesting week last week. We see it sat around 10 to 14 bucks for a couple months in that range, and then really spiked as people found out, wait a second, there's a short squeeze in First Majestic and there's a short squeeze in silver. So perhaps you can take it first, but that's certainly something I'm looking forward to. Actually, do you know when the futures open on First Majestic? And also any thoughts of what we might see over the next 24 hours in First Majestic silver trading?
I think First Majestic's gone up about $4.50 in 2 days, but there's still this nearly record short interest. If you don't mind, I'll share screen on the short interest, which I think is what people are attacking here. They see the short on First Majestic and they're like, okay, let's bid this up. So the current short volume as of about a week ago, and it's about a week lag from this being reported, it's about 45 million share, almost 46 million shares, which is about 23.3% of the share float. That's really high for really any silver company, especially one as well known as First Majestic and as respected as First Majestic in terms of their operations, their efficiency, the type of deposits that they have, and their relationship with the silver community. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to be that short. And I think people are fighting that, much like they're fighting the SLV and GameStop and AMC. It's part of the same movement. When that breaks, I don't know. I don't know what the price has to go to break, but it seems as though there's a tug of war going on in that stock right now. And I know from writing articles on First Majestic, on Seeking Alpha over the years, if you write anything that's even perhaps objectively negative, then there is a very rabid group of followers that will hold you to task for that. And so I think Keith and company have generated a very strong core group of followers in that stock. And I think the message that they have put out to the market over recent years has been heard by a wider group of people. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are trying to bid up that stock. And you and I over lunch were hypothesizing what First Majestic could open at. And I thought maybe it would gap a couple of bucks up right at the open. But I think it's going to be, I think in some of these battleground stocks, it's going to be a battle back and forth all week long, maybe a couple of 3 weeks. So the way I would play it is maybe take an options position, on that stock if you wanted to. But I definitely think First Majestic is part of this wave, and so I wouldn't want to be a short holding that stock right now. I think you're in a precarious position.
Yeah, and Rob, you
Could
mentioned.
Oh, sorry.
I'll pass it your way in a second. Just Rob, you mentioned.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ronan.
No, I was going to ask Rob. It was a connected question about if you were buying options, and if investors are buying options on First Majestic, there could be the potential that the option market makers who take the other side of the calls would have to go and hedge their positions with buying First Majestic as well, which I was reading about today is called a gamma squeeze. I didn't know what a gamma squeeze was, but I've read up on it today. So by buying calls, investors are also putting pressure on the market makers of options to actually buy the stock, because they have to hedge the fact that they've written the calls. So that could be something that might appear this week as well.
Yes, I agree with that. And one of my subscribers texted me earlier today. There's also a call on some of these forums to drive up VIX as well, because there is some linkage with VIX and a lot of derivative plays in the markets. If they can drive up VIX enough, it may screw around with the algos that use VIX in order to set certain positions that could really cause a lot of issues with the big trading desks. For so long, the trading desks have been writing the algos. And I think in particular, I'm going to give credit back to millennials again. They understand this probably better than anybody that's grown up with technology. They understand these systems. And I think they're fighting back, and I think they're bringing an incredible amount of knowledge. And I think that they're probing. It's like I have about 25 years in tech and a master's in cybersecurity, and this looks like somebody probing for a cybersecurity attack. It's got the same overall pattern. They're probing for weaknesses in the financial model, and they're trying different things to see what could break that model and work in their favor. So I don't think we've seen the end of this at all. I think it's going to continue to get a little bit more volatile. And I think the powers that be that have run these markets for a long time are up against it. Maybe we'll see if they've met their match. But the people doing this are very, very intelligent. And to your point, yes, I do think that gamma squeeze is one of their strategies.
Yeah, and along those lines, I know we have a lot of options traders. That was actually my background, working on the New York Stock Exchange, running a specialist post. And because of everything that's going on, we are doing a special call later, options for silver trading. The link is in the description field below. Yara, maybe you can toss that into the chat window. But that's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight, which I think will be pretty darn exciting because the markets will have opened. And I would say one thought, anyone who has option questions and saying like, what should I buy? You're not going to be able to tell anything tonight. I mean, you can think about it, but the market pricing when it opens tomorrow is going to be drastically different, especially if this pattern holds, where at least on this SLV proxy for what it is, I see a spot price up here of 29.80. So if silver should follow this, and let's call that $3.60. Gee, if silver is up $3.60 when the stock market opens in the morning, you'd have to think First Majestic would be up a good chunk. And here's the thing is that keep in mind with the options, this is something I've been thinking about. Rob, we talked about this morning. I never thought of even when I was an option trader on the floor. The way volatility works, which is what's pricing your option, it's kind of a lagging indicator. And I don't know how many people have noticed that, because let's say that the stock market opens down 5%. Market goes down, spot price goes down, but the volatility level also gets jacked. Everyone's panicking, so the volatility level gets bid up. But the thing is, at that point, the big move has already happened. So the level that you're paying is basically now your break-even move. You can still win, but you kind of need something bigger than what just happened. So if First Majestic opens up $5 or $6 tomorrow, those call options, you're basically you can win, but it's like you're paying an expensive price. So it's really, unless like First Majestic shoots a really big chunk from there, I don't know. I would imagine I still have a bunch of the call option positions I picked up last week on First Majestic. I would think if there's like, if it was up $5 or $6, just because it would be so jacked, I would probably sell off some portion of that. Again, you know, what I would be balancing that against, and it is by all means disclaimer, not legal financial advice, but you know, you're looking at the probabilities. Does, let's say First Majestic's at $24. If you buy options there, if it goes GameStop and is up at $60 later in the afternoon, then you're still going to win big. But if that doesn't happen, then, you know, but you're paying a higher price for that bet. It's like something's a 50-50 shot to happen and you pay a penny for it. Well, you know, you lose a penny, you don't care. You can keep making that bet. If you pay 48 cents, 49 cents, the odds are not as good. So anyway, a couple things to balance on First Majestic, and I'll mention one more time the link for that call, options call tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. That is free to attend, so will not be on YouTube. So go sign up there if you'd like to be part of that. We'll be taking questions there. And with that said, I'm curious, does anybody have any thoughts on how actually, Rafi, I would like to send it to you next. What are you seeing in Platinum and Palladium so far?
Well, I think Platinum sold off with gold somewhere in the middle of the day, right? When they monkey hammered gold down, I think Platinum went down with it. I mean, Platinum is it's going to be a lot more volatile because it's not a monetary metal like gold and silver. So this looks to be a run on monetary metals, on the money sector of metals. Platinum is more of an industrial metal, and it's used primarily, I think, 80% in catalytic converters for cars. And you know, the car manufacturing is way down because of lockdowns and pandemic and this and that. So natural demand for palladium should be way down. But still, we're seeing a large delivery amounts on the COMEX. I think it was like 2,181 deliveries this month. I think the record is something like 4,000. So, I mean, it could be that monetary demand is spilling over for platinum, because it is a pseudo monetary metal. It has been used for money, though it's not really that. That's not really its purpose. Palladium, I don't really understand palladium that much. I just see it as an indicator for where platinum might go. Because they're both similarly have similar uses for industry. But in the end, if there is a run on silver, then yeah, platinum is going to go much higher, but the moves are going to make you nauseous, and you don't want to hold too much of that stuff. It's like candy. It's like candy silver, you know. And if silver's like candy gold, you don't want to overdose on this stuff. It'll give you like investment diabetes.
Well, I love you put that in some nice terms that anyone can understand there, Rafi. And I know you look at the COMEX quite a bit. Any thoughts? We've seen some really big numbers, like 2,000, if I recall correctly. That's quite a big boy for platinum here. Anything you could share on that?
In terms of the number of deliveries on platinum, that's really not my area of expertise. I don't really know if this is metal leaving the COMEX or if it's just warrants being traded. But I mean, I think that platinum contracts are 50 ounces per contract, and there's always a very thin balance of platinum there, because there's no real physical demand for it other than the use of it in industry. But I think in gold we saw the January contract end, I think somewhere around 40,000 contracts, which should all be delivered by the end of the month. And we should see if there's a big squeeze on silver that bleeds into gold. We should see spot contracts in gold also going to delivery on the same day, which I think Rob calls shadow contracts, but whatever you call them. You know, if traders are buying spot gold and taking delivery of it, which we should see if open interest does not match the amount of deliveries taken on the day, if open interest rises, farther above the amount of deliveries taken that same day, then spot deliveries are being bought for delivery immediately, and that's something we should watch out for to see if this short squeeze is progressing.
All right, well, that will be fun to follow. We're getting close to wrapping this one up. We'll have more coverage later today, but really appreciate everyone's time here. So a few last fun ones to dig into. Perhaps we can keep answers on the shorter side and get a couple opinions on each of these. But how do you think the banks will respond? I mean, I think it would be a little bit naive, in my opinion, to think that we're not going to see the price smashed again. I mean, when the only tool you have is the hammer, everything looks like a nail. That's all they have. It's like all the Fed has is the ability to print. So I'll take this one first, if I may. If you see, I wouldn't rule out, we could be in 2 hours, maybe we see silver down like $2. They're going to try and dump paper. My personal guess is that the next time there's a big smash, I wonder if that just is the last time and it gets blown up in their face. But I would say just be prepared for these things. Be prepared that they'll change the rules like they did with the Hunt brothers, like they did in Robin Hood. They're caught. They're going to cheat. Imagine it's one of those movies where the devil is fighting to save himself. Based on some of the things I hear about some of these folks, maybe it's not a completely inappropriate metaphor, but expect that. And anybody else have any thoughts on that issue of how they might respond or what to be prepared for?
Yeah, Chris, I just had one quick point which is relevant to your question.
Sir.
And it was about the, in London, they have the LBMA gold auction twice a day and the LBMA silver auction once a day at midday. So I think that they will want, obviously, as low a price for the beginning of the LBMA silver auction as possible. And that's done by an algorithm now, which chooses an opening price. And then there's various rounds. I think they last 30 seconds or a minute each. So what might happen, the bullion dealers might be trying to get the price down on COMEX just before midday, which is 7 a.m. New York time, so that they have a lower opening price for the auction. And even if maybe the auction price goes up through the rounds, they want to start that as low as possible. So I think that if there's any coordinated hit, they might try and do that at 7 a.m., before 7 a.m. New York time, but also to try and keep it down before the equity markets open at 9:30.
I agree with that
That would be
wholeheartedly.
the morning fix, correct?
Yeah, the midday, which is 7 a.m. New York time.
PM fix. If you look at the charts that Dimitri Speck has created so eloquently, he crams 10 years worth of market data into one chart. And the AM fix and the PM fix always have the footprint of that suppression, typically the largest being the PM fix as you head into New York trading. That's when they always do it. I would suspect that's exactly what you see. If I had to guess, it opens up tonight much higher. A $29 and change SLV price denotes a much higher spot price because it always trades at a discount, over 30, I would argue. But I would argue it goes much higher into the evening. And as it hits the AM fix, it'll get the first whack, come back up a bit. The PM fix in London will be the much harder hit as we move into New York trading. So I would be surprised if they don't do all they can to hit it as it enters into New York trading, to knock the wind out of all these people who haven't lived through the same type of barrage that we have over the past many years, where it's old hat to us. The rest of them may be frightened. I guess we'll have to see what the resolve really is.
Andy, along those lines, we talked last year, it was right. I remember after it came back from PDAC, which was when silver was getting pounded almost every Friday after COVID began. And you were reporting that you were selling record amounts of silver. I still remember it was one day I asked you, I said, okay, but what about even on the days, because it was like 3 or 4 Fridays in a row where it just got destroyed. I said, what about even on the days where it gets pounded? And I'll always remember what you said, because you told me, no, they keep buying because they know these smashes are bullshit. They know what it is. It's not that the supply and demand is changing, but they keep buying. And I think especially now, the power that these groups have and everyone who's following it is that I think if the price drops like $2 in the morning, people are going to say, all right, we know your trick. And I mean, in my own selfish way, like I'm kind of hoping that, in fact, I would love it, you know, and the thing, if the market's open and silver's down $2, again, I will say this not as legal financial advice, but as an option trader, this is not appropriate for most people, but just sharing my opinion. Silver was down $2 tomorrow. Something I've been thinking about for a while is converting most of my mining shares into options. And again, I'm being clear. I'm not saying anybody else should do that. I'm just sharing that's based on my thinking of what I've seen this weekend, what we've been talking about for the last hour and a half. That's where I see that. And, you know, I guess, Andy, tossing it back to you, do you think that that's how customers are going to react, where if they see it down, they're just going to say,
Yes.
give me the metal?
100%. Our business is exponentially stronger. Yara will understand this as she's been immersed in it now. When the price gets hammered, our business is accentuated dramatically. When the price goes up, people get a little bit more concerned, waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the value, waiting for a better entry point. But when the price goes down, it's the opposite. And has always strengthened my resolve that this is all a paper phenomenon. All of the drive-by shootings have no correlation with retail demand in the industry. So yes, I would argue if the price goes down, our phones will ring off the hook. If the price goes up too fast, people get a little frightened.
Yara, you've been hearing from customers all day. What do you think?
I think if the price goes up, people are still going to be buying after the real world situation that we're all experiencing right now. I mean, there were people that could not buy silver that wanted to this weekend. I don't know that it's going to take a price going down to keep the momentum going. I think people realize that this short squeeze was a real thing. And I know Andy talks about it's going to be fine until it isn't. And I think we experienced that in real time. And so I think whether it's people who have been in for a while or are brand new, I think that became real. So I think it could continue to be busy regardless of whether it goes up or down.
In your experience, when you have people that are really interested in something and we have more interest in silver than, I don't know, does anybody disagree with this statement that we have more interest in silver at this very moment right now today than probably ever in history?
Short silver squeeze was trending in multiple countries and multiple states on Twitter. I don't know that Twitter is representative of the entire population, but it is a good subset of people who talk about stuff. And silver was on it. So I don't know that, I mean, you showed the commodities section of the Wall Street Post or the Wall Street Journal. Silver, like I've never seen silver in a headline except for on our show and other shows that are represented here in the 3 years I've been involved. So I don't know. There's a lot more eyes on it and a lot more intention and attention. So I think that magnifies everything.
And then if you have a situation where, at least according to anything that anybody on this panel or that I bring on my show seems to be able to find, you certainly looks like there's a short situation set up. And if you have something that's already highly in demand, more interest than any point possibly in history, and then you tell them you can't have it because people can't buy it right now. I mean, it's like if somebody wanted to create a short squeeze, you couldn't create a better set of conditions to generate that, I would think.
Like a PS5. PS5. You know, you can they retail for $500, but you have to pay $1,000 on eBay to get one.
Scalping PS5s. Well, Chris, I would say one thing that I don't know if this is the most interest that silver has ever had in history, but I would definitely say there's a good chance that it's the most interest that it's ever gotten since it was demonetized in 1873, 1871, one of those years. Because before then, silver was money and everyone was interested in it. Since it was demonetized, and maybe now this is, our first redate with silver as a possible money again. I put it that way. And by the way, your tweet, Chris, your tweet is featured on Kitco on the most recent article as your tweet in a big box.
Of which one?
One of your tweets on the silver squeeze.
I couldn't fall asleep after our round table last night, so I was up tweeting late at night. I'm like, this wasn't. Hopefully, I said something witty and clever that they captured there.
Chris, can I just make a couple points on that?
Please,
So,
yes.
First of all, I've been on various metal dealer sites today, looking at what's been going on and how basically everyone's shutting down the sales. And, one of the things just to keep in mind is that, for someone to go and buy, retail silver, they're paying a 20 to 25% premium over spot anyway. And they're still selling out, and no one, people want it, and it's not an issue. So I think, to your point about if it goes down $2 in the paper market, I don't think people are going to care one way or the other. I think they're going to just want to buy it when they can tomorrow, when these online dealers all sort of open up for business again. So that's one point I would say. The other point that's tangentially related, but not directly on SLV and PSLV, as someone who basically has spent most of my career in the public equity markets, I would be very surprised if we don't see both of those, the managers of those funds come out over the next few days and reaffirm how they're going to represent people's interest to buy physical silver. And basically they need to basically get in front of this and show people and basically sell people, give them confidence that they will have the physical silver to back up their shares. And if they can do that, I think it's a great opportunity for them as ETF managers. But I think they're going to do that, and I think that'll be something that will be interesting to see how they can reassure their investors that they're going to have the silver, and if there is huge demand over the next week or multiple weeks or months, that they can actually get the silver and get it into a vault.
Ronan, as someone who has dug quite deeply into this issue, how successful do you think SLV is going to be at reassuring investors that they have the silver tomorrow? I would say I don't see how that could possibly be done, but what do you say?
Maybe tomorrow they will reaffirm that they were able to fill SLV with the inflows that came in on Friday, because it's like 1,100 tons, and they may be able to source that in the London vaults, because there are over 30,000 tons in the London vaults. We don't know who owns it, but I think if that has to happen a few times in succession over Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, it will be very difficult. It can't keep happening on the scale of the inflows that happened on Friday. It can't keep happening 3-4 times more in the coming week, because that would be 4,000 or 5,000 tons of silver.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of when one of the governments comes out and warns, we got the currency under control, it's all good to go. And generally, in my experience, that means that it's about to blow underneath the surface. And Ronan, you did some great reporting on that last year, poking holes throughout all these ridiculous Three Stooge routines they sent out in their press releases. So, question, I'm sure there will be some opinions on this one. The unknown that many of us have spent the last 12 years, you guys all your own individual length. How close do you think we are, maybe in terms of ounces, but it's like the numbers never added up to me. And I always thought one day there's going to be someone shows up and says now that the metal's not there. They can't deliver it, which is, to be clear, slightly different, because there is still metal right now with the dealers, but it's the hedging mechanism that is not open until now only an hour and 12 minutes away. But does anybody have any thoughts? I haven't figured out that answer yet, but I don't know where we sit today. Could it be like, if someone buys 10 million ounces tomorrow, they can't deliver? Or does anybody have any gauge for that?
I mean, I think right now in the retail sector, there's not going to be any company that's going to feel comfortable going short exposure right now on that kind of a position. So, it's a very fragile supply chain already, and when you add this kind of demand and this kind of volatility, I think it would be foolish for any company to make promises like that in this environment. Can't say on a larger level, like trying to pull it off of COMEX right now, that others reportable category is, I think they have 10,000 contracts long right now. Taking that kind of amount off of COMEX potentially, but I think the retail business right now is going to be very, very leery of going short on large purchases right now.
Yeah, and to add to that, to what Andy said on the COMEX, they don't have to deliver on all the contracts. They can settle for cash, or maybe some people roll their contracts to another month. So you can't necessarily force delivery on COMEX, but you can put a lot of pressure. And I think if a lot of people were wanting delivery in COMEX were forced to referee that situation between the longs and the shorts, it could cause for some very interesting news, and could be an indicator as to how healthy the stocks actually are. I've openly questioned the inventory numbers multiple times. I guess it puts me in the category of a conspiracy theorist, and I don't really care. I'm a former auditor, so I was taught at the Big Four, and when I look at the numbers, I think they're bullshit. And I'm saying that professionally as an auditor, because their inventory audits are not published, and there are issues with the supervisory oversight by the CFTC and the CME group over those custodians. And so I'll openly question it until they come out and prove me wrong. And I gave them a chance. I printed an article at Seeking Alpha in which the CME group tried to get removed and successfully got removed. It stayed up at FX Empire. And then the CME group emailed me and said, your numbers are wrong. And I said, prove it. And they backed down. They would not. I said, just give me, two directors emailed me from there. And the CEO of Seeking Alpha was emailing me. And I told all of them point blank, I said, prove it, or else I'm going to keep running this story until you prove me wrong. I said, I'm an auditor, give me the data, or I'm calling bullshit. And I said, you don't have to give me a director, just give me a line level analyst and show me the numbers, or at least show me enough data that I have some confidence there. And they backed down, and I called them cowards afterwards. And I'm going to keep doing it, because as an auditor, I saw this all the time. I could tell you the story at Blockbuster Video where I was an auditor working for internal controls. I wasn't the external auditor. That was PwC, but I was working directly for the controller. I found what is categorized by Sarbanes-Oxley as a material weakness, which you don't want to have. And I tried to report it, and my manager tried to shut me up. And so I walked upstairs to the PwC people, and I said, I'm not allowed to report what I found. But I said, look here. And then later on, Blockbuster had some material weaknesses reported. So I've seen companies lie. I've seen the accountants lie. I've seen CEOs lie. I've seen controllers lie. And until you can prove you have what you say you have, I'm going to call it bullshit, and I'm going to keep saying it. So, but we're going to find out. We're going to find out what they have, because if this continues, because you look at what happened to the SLV, you had this massive bid on SLV, and that typically, a little bit less so on the SLV than GLD, but it typically causes a spike in price. And then you had this massive beat down. 1 billion ounces were traded in paper on the COMEX Thursday and Friday to kind of beat down this surge in silver. It's about 2.5 times what they actually have delivered in the registered category, I think was the calculation. So, keep up the pressure and force them to prove that they have it. And if they do, everything's fine. Then okay, fine. I mean, they're not going to come out and prove it. So you have to go to the market and prove it that way. So I would encourage people to keep doing this and just make them prove it.
Yeah, and I was giggling there as you were saying that. I was just imagining like you be like in a courtroom with JP Morgan, just seeing them like try their tricks. Would be fun to watch, hopefully one day. And I might add, as we're getting close to wrapping up here, although, wow, let's have a big hand for our audience out there watching. I thought it was stunning that we had 3,500 people watching live yesterday. We've had 6,500, 70,000 people watching live. Backside of the analytics, it looks like we already have over 30,000 views, which is double yesterday, which was double the day before that. So at least as one metric of how things are developing. Anyway, a lot of people watching, a lot of interest, and I'd like to thank everybody who's joined us today. I hope you're having a lot of fun and getting a lot out of this. If so, go ahead, hit that share button if you think other people you know would like to know about the information that's revealed here, which I was grateful that I heard about before it was too late to do something about it. So anyway, with that said, I have one last question for anyone here, and then we'll wrap up for now. And opening in 1 hour and 5 minutes. I mean, sometimes those Sunday night openings are exciting, although I think there's a lot of anticipation for this one. So before we wrap up, curious, any thoughts on any of the other markets as they open tomorrow? I guess the futures will be opening soon. Asian markets will be opening, and then of course the stock market opening tomorrow. Anybody have any expectations or words of wisdom? Again, not legal financial advice, but just thoughts that people would be wise to keep in mind. Rafi, how about you first?
Well, okay. Well, so one thing I do look for to see like a reflection of the late 1970s market, because what I'm looking for is a reflection of the late 1970s market where gold and silver just kept going up and up and up. And the only thing that saved it was Paul Volcker jacking interest rates up to about 20%, which saved the dollar. And the dollar is still running on those fumes today. This time, if gold and silver do what they did in the late 1970s, there is no rescuing the dollar. The Fed cannot do anything about it. There's no way they can get it even close to 20%. Forget it. Impossible. So in the late 1970s, what we saw very often, not every day, but especially late 1979 into early 1980, we saw what I call a gold flag, which means that all dollar-denominated assets are down. The 10-year yield is up, meaning bonds are down. The dollar index is down. The S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, or however you want to gauge stocks, is down. And the only thing that's up, in the face of all that, gold is up. So if we see a gold flag or a silver flag, coming more often, then we'll know that this is a flight from dollar-denominated assets generally. So watch interest rates in relation to the dollar index, in relation to stocks, and what gold and silver do when all those are down on the same day.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Who else would like to take a crack at that one?
Well, it was a really weak week last week in the overall equity markets, and so I think Rafi makes a really good point. When I was an analyst in basically the first half of my year, an equities analyst, we were constantly watching the U.S. dollar as an indicator of what gold and silver were going to do. And even though we've had these big rallies in the metals recently, the U.S. dollar is still near highs, at least recent highs. I don't know if it's an all-time high, but the U.S. dollar has been really, really strong. And I guess that's the other shoe to drop from a macro point of view. And we haven't really seen that yet. So that could be really good. You asked about tomorrow. I'm not answering the question, but I think that's a great point and worth the viewers watching that relationship going forward, because it could be really important.
I guess I'd just like to add one point, and that is that I've seen a constant theme really for the better part of the last 4 years of major money de-dollarizing quietly and slowly and repositioning. And, we all have recency bias. We all expect a certain outcome based upon years of being beaten down by the cartel. One of these days, the big money will have repositioned enough where they'll let it run. And that's exactly right. I think that, you saw market weakness over the weekend, or on Friday rather, on the stock market. A lot of people out there, I think even the most ardent stock bulls are waking up and realizing that not only is the market incredibly volatile, but it's also disconnected from reality, from Main Street. And then, profit's not a four-letter word. Let's not forget the new administration wants to jack up capital gains taxes and stock transfer taxes and corporate taxes. And we're seeing a flight, I think, by big money to safety, out of the dollar into other asset classes. And they've been doing it for a while. So one of these days, and remember at the end of the story, the wolf comes. One of these days, the wolf is going to come and the price will run. And not to say there won't be corrections, but like everyone has said today, something just seems really different right now. I don't expect it to take off tomorrow and continue to run and the stock market collapse. It's not the end of the story. But nonetheless, it does seem like there's been a sea change in sentiment on many levels. And I think we all need to buckle up. Remember, we do have a really nice supply of product. Please feel free to reach out to Arcadia at Miles Franklin. We have really a very large supply of silver in stock. And in 1 hour and 1 minute, we'll be able to start locking orders in, or maybe 10 minutes after as we assess the situation. But again, Chris, thanks for letting us be a part of this. And I think this is the really a great way to get information out there. Love to come back whenever you do these.
Yeah, well, it's quite an exciting time. There's the Miles Franklin website, and you can find out any information at Arcadia at Miles Franklin.
Let me stop you real quick, Chris, real quick. If you look up there on the silver price, you had mentioned you saw that company that was selling at 29 and change. That's what we had to do. We had to jack the spot price up by $1.50 earlier today when we were taking orders. And then it got to be kind of frightening and we just suspended everything. So that's what you're going to see. There's a disconnection right there between the COMEX price and the real price. That's just a little glimmer of it. And you can see what will happen if things get crazier. That disconnection will grow much more extreme. Sorry,
Andy, didn't we see that last spring as well when we first had the pandemic hit? We saw those big spreads between the physical and
Yes, we did. Mostly in gold, but yes, that's exactly right. We did.
All right. And Ronan, perhaps any final parting words? I don't know if this happened while we were on the call, but looks like Bullion Star temporarily halted taking orders now. So any final thoughts, anything people should know, and how can they find your great research? Is Ronan still muted? There? Ronan, I think you're muted.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually didn't know that we had suspended trading because we were on the call, but it was something that we were discussing earlier today internally with Torgny, our CEO, because there was very high demand, and we have quite a lot of silver stock because we've built strategically inventory to be prepared for these type of situations. But having seen that now, it's something that we've been talking about. So it's the same as what Miles Franklin has done. It's to preserve the stock by waiting a few hours to see where the price is going to be in an hour from now. Yeah. Yep. So one quick thing I was going to say, and it's something that Rafi said resonated with me. Something Max Kaiser talks about recently, and he's a very he's a perma-bull for Bitcoin, but he talks about Bitcoin as this black hole vortex that's pulling in liquidity from all around the world out of fiat currencies into Bitcoin. But I think that gold and silver, if we're on the cusp of a new era, could start doing that. As the prices go up, people will want to be part of that rising asset class, and it could pull in a lot of liquidity like a black hole, pulling cash out of fiat currencies, people transferring that into real money, physical gold and silver.
Well, thank you for being here, Ronan, and everything you shared. Certainly going to be a wild time, and we will look forward to seeing that in an hour. Rafi, any final words from you, sir?
Final words: don't let your emotions get the best of you. Stay calm. Don't get too excited. Hedge your emotions, just like you should hedge your bets. And if you want to join me on the Endgame Investor, just Google the Endgame Investor and for a 2-week free trial, and see what we're doing. It's fun, especially today and tomorrow.
Yeah, rather than getting emotional and losing it, just read a rational investor who's laid it out all for you in advance. So I thank you for all of your insight, Rafi. Mr. Keats, Gold Silver Pros, can you share a parting word, sir?
Sure. We have a free newsletter. If you just click on newsletter there at the top and register, we will send out our daily article content. We also have, by demand of my subscribers, a subscriber newsletter we're doing now that's comprised of Gold Silver Pros University, as well as a quarterly newsletter. And we just ran a conference this past Thursday. I will replay that for everyone. If you register on that newsletter link there at the top, you'll get an email for when we have that content available. And thank you for everyone that supported the conference, including yourself, Chris.
Well, it was an honor to be there and good to learn some new tricks. So thank you, Rob. Great to see you as always. And maybe when we wrap up here, we'll go get something to eat. I think Silver Dog's ready to go outside. And David Stein, can you give any parting thoughts and let folks know where they can find out about a good silver mining company called Kuya Silver?
Sure. Well, thanks for doing this, Chris. I think it was a lot of great information that we all shared today, and I found it really useful myself. So we're, the company's Kuya Silver, KUYA silver.com, and obviously. I don't want to take away from the enthusiasm to buy physical silver. I think that's great. I'm a big owner of physical silver myself, but obviously a mining company that focuses on silver like Kuya, we're going to make a lot more money and with a $50 silver price than a $25 silver price. So I'm very excited to see what we can do with this movement for the rest of the year and beyond, and I think it's going to be great for everybody.
Well, I'm also excited about it, and I'm glad that you came on the show a couple weeks ago and shared a bit about what you're doing. So thanks again for being here, giving us the mining perspective. And Miss Yara Vinay, any final thoughts from you and where people can find some of the great things that you are involved with?
Well, I am lucky and overjoyed enough to be involved with Arcadia Economics. So you can find all of our content at Arcadia Economics, as well as our weekly special from Miles Franklin, which will be updated shortly. It's a great place to check every day just for Arcadia content. You can also get on our newsletter email list there, which is a great way to stay in touch with us, since it seems like I've been getting lots of messages that people are getting unsubscribed or not getting notifications about their YouTube subscription. So go right there to the upper right hand corner and sign up for the newsletter, and that way you'll know when we do events like we're going to do tonight, like the options call, and just keep in touch with us in case there's ever a reason why you don't get our YouTube announcements. And sign up for the call tonight. It's going to be on Zoom. It's going to be fun. I feel very grateful to get to share screen time with these smart guys. And so I like to be able to, add where I can, which is oftentimes making these events possible. So thank you guys for joining us. It's pretty awesome to be a part of. And I guess just keep in touch as all of this is going, and keep your emotions in check. I feel that one in my heart as I'm talking to people. Some people are really one way or the other, and I think it's important to remember that silver is kind of like the energy of the moon, and it waxes and wanes, and there are tides, and just if you're on a boat, it doesn't matter. So stay cool.
Well said.
And I don't know if anyone could hear the sound in the background. Yara, you've put up with my circus for a couple of years now, and some of the weird hobbies I have. So is there any chance you think we might be giving away some beautiful silver ounces, since I still have this tube of Britannias that my homie Andy Scheckman sent me a little while ago? What do you think? Do you think we'll give away some silver tonight?
I think we're in the process of giving away some silver maybe right now.
Yes, well, we will do that. Yara, maybe you can pick a lucky winner in the chat online right now. And that's right, folks. Always be nice to Yara in the chat room during these videos, because she is fully authorized to give away free copies of the big silver short. And I would say, you know, there's no way to win it, but just be kind, help people, and never know. Because again, here is the big silver short. That's the book that I wrote last year. Andy Scheckman is in it. The great Rob Keents wrote the back, quite a touching tribute on the back. It is available on Kindle. You can get the paperback version. You can get the audiobook version. And the whole point of this book was to lay out as simply and clearly as possible in one specific thing as much of the relevant history. This was done in interview style format. Each chapter is a different interview with a silver expert sharing their own unique insight. What I thought was actually kind of cool was how, in many cases, you know, stuff like Warren Buffett buying a large chunk of silver, actually bigger than the Hunt brothers, and then, you know, heard that in 2006, basically he got himself in trouble, was given a deal by the folks who give such deals, saying basically, give up your silver or you're going to have lawyers all over you until eternity. So I heard that the first time. I was thinking, all right, well, it sounds interesting. I don't know if that's true. I wasn't there. Yet that's one of the things that I personally loved about the book, where you hear different people who all came at it from their own way, confirm so many of these things. So anyway, that is the big silver short, audio, paperback, and more. Did I give everybody a chance to say goodbye? I think that I did. And perhaps
Sorry, guys, the chat's going by so fast. I literally can't even click on something long enough to see a name. So I will put somebody in here as soon as I can get it to slow down.
All right. And actually, my final parting word here is I thank everybody, first of all, in the chat for being here. Let's have a big hand for all the people watching with this great interest in silver. I mean, it's really you guys that are out there making this whole event happen, not just this show, but what's happening in these markets. I think it's purely awesome. And on my last note, I did find this link that Rafi talked about before. Here's an article on Kitco. I think this is the first time I've appeared on Kitco. Fortunately, I worked my champagne bottle, silver, and beach emoticons into there. But I guess last night I mentioned APMEX, JM Bullion, and SD Bullion are all out of available at the moment. Now we've added Miles Franklin and a couple others on there. So if anyone wonders if Wall Street Bets and Reddit has the ability to impact the silver market, that's your answer. 34 million shares of SLV being added on Friday. That's your answer. So again, everybody, please invest responsibly. Do what is appropriate. If there's ever a market where leverage would probably not be an ideal idea, this is it. So again, with that said, we're going to wrap up for today, but thank you everyone out there for being here. And thank you so much to my panelist guests for joining me. I hope this really does. I hope in a couple of years, there's some people on here who can look back on this and find that it was helpful to them. And so with that said, we are going to wrap up, fellas, and I will see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
See
Chris.
you later.
Bye.